guessed that in the year 2024, I would be doing a get ready with me using the original Naked palette from Urban Decay. Yes, the original Naked palette is back. Actually, I'm pretty sure that the day that this video goes up is when it has returned. This video is not sponsored by Urban Decay. If anything, we're gonna maybe roast Urban Decay a little bit in this video because I wanna take a walk down memory lane while we do a look with the palette that kind of started it all. This palette was really influential in the beauty space. I still very distinctly remember when this launched and then the subsequent Naked palette launches after that. So let's do a look with this today. I did already go ahead and prime my eyes because I want to start with eyes. Like, we're not going to start with the base, we're going to get right into it. And I think the shade I'm going to start with is the shade Naked, which is a matte mid-tone brown. And we'll try using the included brush. So this palette originally launched in the year 2010, and I was curious about pricing at that time compared to what they're selling it for today. And I found an old archived post from Temptalia that said it was $44, and I was trying to remember if that sounded right to me or not. I remember it being $49, but I know it has like incrementally gone up. I didn't purchase Naked 1, though I did get it like years later in PR, but I had Naked 2 because Naked 2, okay, here's the timeline. It went 2010 was Naked 1, 2011 was Naked 2, and then 2013 was Naked 3, but it came out at the very end of 2013. And I remember buying the Naked 2 palette, and if you've been on my channel for a while, you might have heard me share this story before, but I remember saving up for this palette, which is why I swear I want to say I paid $49 for it. I remember buying it like maybe a year or two after it came out, and I was in college at the time and I was a waitress, and I remember saving up all my extra tips once I had, accounted for what I needed for my rent and my other bills. And I was like, I'm gonna buy myself an eyeshadow palette. And at the time, I only had drugstore products in my collection. I didn't own anything high-end, and this was gonna be my big splurge of a purchase. And I even remember going back and forth for so long, like, do I get the Naked 1 or do I get the Naked 2? And there were so many videos on the internet kind of comparing them, trying to decide which one is for you. Like, I remember researching this so thoroughly because it was a huge investment for me. Like I said, it was my first real high-end purchase, and I was like, I don't want to buy the wrong one. I want to get the one that's going to have all the perfect shades for me. So I bought Naked 2, and that palette stuck with me for a long time. It was like my only eyeshadow palette for quite a few years there. Okay, this brush, I don't think I'm going to use this brush to do the look. It's a little scratchy. I mean, it's exactly as I remember it, but it's a little scratchy. I like something a little softer. So, and the shape is very square and firm, and I want something fluffier. So, okay, what am I going to use? Okay, this is the BK A503. It's from their Hot and Flashy collab with Angie. But this was such a, honestly, I think it was a very fun time on the internet, but maybe I'm biased, but I just distinctly remember tutorial after tutorial, like, and it's kind of stuck around for years. We didn't see the launch frequency that we see today, so there was a long time there that the Naked palette was like on the top. Seemingly everyone had that palette, and I mean, even still to this day, I'm sure a lot of people have their original Naked palette, and I know that's part of the reason a lot of people were really stoked to see this return because you weren't able to get it for a while. So I was trying to find the timeline for that. Okay, so it ended up getting discontinued in 2018. And in those 8 years that the original Naked palette, Naked 1, was in existence, they sold 30 million units. Okay, wait, this already, I tend to go with a really minimal eye look these days. I'm rarely reaching into more than 1 or 2 shadows maximum, but today we're going down memory lane. So I want to do something that is very aligned with how I probably would have worn this palette back in the day, but this already feels like I normally would go in with an even lighter shade right away in my transition, or like for the transition, but we're gonna keep going, and I'm gonna take a little bit of the shade Buck, which is the next deepest matte brown. I'm mostly gonna focus this on the outer corner though. I'm gonna start building up a little bit of depth. These are applying as I remember them. I was curious to see how the formula would perform today compared to the original, and it is hard to say. The thing about these, I didn't feel like the shadow formula held up as well against some of the newer eyeshadow launches that we have. Like I just have so many wonderful eyeshadows in 2024 that blend even better than this. I think it's looking slightly patchy, but that obviously could be user error. You know, I'm not a makeup artist, but I don't think it's blending as effortlessly as some of my favorite current eyeshadow palettes. But we're gonna keep going. It has to be cute because I'm going to dinner after this, so it needs to come together. But anyways, at the time when that palette was discontinued in 2018, I remember it being a really buzzed about move from Urban Decay. A lot of people were very sad. And I found a quote from Wendy, the founder of Urban Decay. She said, "It's painful to leave your past behind, but it's also essential to always evolve," which is funny to read now in current day when they actually did bring the palette back. But anyways, she says, "I will forever miss Naked, but we plan to turn the grief into even more greatness. Urban Decay will continue to thrive in Naked's memory and honor. Just wait and see." Well, if you remember, what happened next was 1 year later in 2019, they launched the Naked Reloaded. And I remember this was not super well received. I just remember the public opinion being like, okay, wait, you discontinued Naked to give us a new version of it that people didn't really like as much. Like it had some of those peach shades in there. The packaging was a bit different. It didn't include a brush and it was this like thick plush material. It was okay. I remember owning that palette and it was fine. But I think it had some very big shoes to step into and inevitably it kind of failed. Like this just has been one of the most iconic palettes and even just products of the last couple of decades, so I think just going to be hard to live up to that. But as we know, this eventually led to the entire Naked line. We saw every iteration possible of the Naked palette. They did a purple one, they've done gold ones, they even like did some green ones, which didn't really seem to make much sense in the line. There was the cherry Naked, Naked Smoky. They tried it all. That was a thing for a while there. Like every year we were gonna get a new Naked palette, and I always loved, when I do my annual predictions, I always loved trying to guess like what the Naked palette theme would be like that year, because we knew inevitably they would be bringing us another Naked palette. But even outside of eyeshadow, this led to Naked foundation, Naked everything. Anything Urban Decay could launch with the name Naked, they did. And sometimes it made sense, sometimes it felt a little bit forced, but you know, I cannot fault Urban Decay for this. They all do this the same way Charlotte Tilbury calls everything Pillow Talk. Like I know that's a shade, but there's like all the Pillow Talk collections. I mean, same with NARS, with Orgasm. They kind of all do it. Okay, I'm going to take... I can't decide which shimmer. I'm like stuck between a few of these. I'm like, do I go brighter? I love Sidecar, Half Baked, a super popular one. I feel like there are certain shades in here that whenever I see someone's old Naked palette and there are shades that are panned either like completely or very significantly, it's oftentimes like Sidecar, Half Baked, or honestly like most of the palette actually, but let's do a little bit of Half Baked, and I am gonna go back to the brush because I do like this for like a shimmer. I'm gonna start with Half Baked. I'll probably use a few shimmers actually, but this is back on August 4th and they're saying that it is limited edition. I don't know just how limited. I haven't seen any specific numbers quantifying that. I will say though, I don't love when things are limited edition. Like I do appreciate the transparency of, okay, we're not gonna restock this, but maybe they are gonna restock it. Brands will do that a lot as well. But I think it creates this false urgency for the consumer of, I need to buy this today or I'm never gonna have a chance. And like, clearly that has not been the case with the Naked palette because we thought it was gone in 2018 and then we got a newer version of it and then they brought it back again, you know? Now going into Sidecar a little bit, and I'm gonna keep this on the inner portion of the lid, but allegedly it will be a very limited launch. And what's interesting to me and kind of a bummer is that they're only selling it on the Ulta website and the Urban Decay website, not on Sephora, which I'm assuming means you can only get in the US because Ulta's only in the US currently. Wait, why am I loving this? Again, as I said, I so rarely do much with my eyeshadow, but every once in a while when I decide to, I'm like, wait, this is so fun. I love the way this looks. It's super glam, but it's really pretty. Also, I'm actually going to take I'm gonna take a slightly deeper shimmer, okay? This is Hustle. I have it on a smaller blending brush. This is the A502, and I'm applying this to the outer portion of the lid. This palette doesn't have any deep mattes. It's really a mostly shimmer palette all around. And I remember at the time, like, I would say these days we hear a lot like, oh, you shouldn't use a shimmer in the crease or you shouldn't, but like there are really no rules to makeup. And if anything, these shimmers are very refined to the point that I think they're a bit easier to apply in the crease than a bolder shimmer would be. They're almost more of that like satiny texture. I had to change the battery to my camera, so in the meantime I added a little bit of mascara. I'm wearing a brown mascara. This is the Rudi and Beaubble collab. This is their chocolate brown mascara, and I never wear eyeliner, but I added a little bit of brown eyeliner. This is new from Kosas. It is their Soul Glazer. I added that to the upper lash line. I will say, I know I was kind of critiquing the mattes in this palette, but the shimmer formula is really, really nice. Like, the shimmers blend really well, and they're different than more current day shimmers that are a lot more sparkly. Like, this is definitely more of that satin texture, less intense, so for some people they might not enjoy that, but I kind of prefer it because I just think it looks super, super smooth on the eye, and I didn't really get too much fallout, which is good because now we're gonna go in with the base product. So we'll start with Danessa Myricks. This is the Yummy Skin, and this entire like naked palette conversation has gotten me going a little bit down memory lane, so let's talk about some other oldies. I just saw this TikTok from a creator who was talking about some of her old favorite makeup products that used to be super popular, and it was unlocking so many memories for me. The first one that she mentioned was the Walking on Eggshells palette from Wet n Wild. And that style of like trio or quad, like those little plastic drugstore ones with the sponge tip applicators, were everything. Like, I just remember having so many of those, and I point out this one because CoverGirl just launched their new like eye enhancers. I reviewed this in a recent video. This is just a single, but they all come with the sponge applicator, and I think this type of applicator gets a lot of hate these days because people definitely prefer a brush, and I get it. I think for blending I prefer a brush, but those like old school applicators I think are one of the best ways to apply a shimmer. Now, I think the best way truly is your hands, but if you have long nails, like, you know, that's kind of hard to do. So this kind of acts like your finger, where it can pick it up and you can still get that impact, but there's no fallout. Also, it's just like not as messy, because then if I'm using my finger, then I have to like go wipe that off, and I know that's a very minor thing, but regardless, I do still enjoy having these little applicators. That's my hot take. Like, I miss those being a thing, and it does make me wonder if that will come back in popularity the same way triangle puffs have become a lot more popular in recent years. This style of a makeup applicator is something we might have looked at as like really dated a few years prior. Like, I even remember when Tati launched it? When she launched her Blendiful, like basically this, and people were like, why would I be using that? And then flash forward to today, these are super duper popular. Like, I'm almost holding out to see if that's gonna happen with sponge applicators. But even with, okay, going back to the Walking on Eggshells little palette, those in general, like, I remember all those drugstore palettes having the suggested placement etched into the shadow. So it would say like crease, brow bone, lid, and we don't see that so much these days. I mean, I'm not gonna say there aren't any brands doing that. If you remember, Natasha Denona launched a palette a few years ago and actually got a lot of backlash because they did have that on the palette, saying like lid, this, that. But the difficult part about that is a shade that might be a crease shade for me would not be a crease shade for someone with a deeper skin tone, and like the placement is gonna really depend on your own skin tone. But I do also feel like a lot of those earlier palettes were a lot more streamlined. There weren't so many shades. If anything, that was part of the reason the Naked palette gained so much popularity, because it was pretty big compared to what was really popular at the time. And I found an article about, again, going back to the Naked palette, but I found an article about how they allegedly created this palette, and they asked everyone, like, what would be your 4 desert island shades? They asked a few people in the office, and these were the three different people, and then they put them all together in the Naked palette. That's allegedly the story. By the way, if I didn't say, I'm applying Fenty Eavesdrop right now, and I'm really working in very, very thin layers, but like kind of layering it up a little bit where I feel that I need a little more coverage. And going back to the applicator conversation, or just like beauty tools in general, I think of that every time I think of a beauty blender. And I remember when I first started getting into makeup when I was in high school, and I'm 30, so that was quite a while ago actually. And I remember disposable sponges being really hot. Like, there weren't the beauty blender didn't exist yet. And we really just had those little white triangle sponges, and they would come in a big pack. And every morning I would just like rip one off, you know, and it was similar to this, but I remember them being like more absorbent and swelling even more than a beauty blender. But again, I'm going off of memory. I haven't used one of these in a long time, but they would soak up a good bit of product, you know. They were similar to this, but I feel like the beauty blender really ignited something, and now we have a sponge as a really common tool, and they're mostly modeled after this shape. I'm gonna take my concealer on the back of my hand actually and just pick it up from there. I've been doing this a lot lately because I feel like it gives me even more control, and again, I'm working in those very small, thin layers, so it doesn't look as heavy. Also, it has been just super duper hot here lately. If anything, this is a little more makeup than I want to wear for the current weather, just because I'm probably gonna sweat it all off. But again, that's where these small layers are coming in handy, because I feel like I can kind of build up at my own pace. When I think of nostalgic makeup, like for me, it's a lot of the foundations that I remember wearing in high school, like the Revlon Colorstay. I feel like I always mention that when I'm talking about like older makeup products, but I just remember the hold that foundation had on me. Like when I was in high school, that was all I used. Like I had so much loyalty to that product. The second I was done with it, I would repurchase it. Before that one though, I do remember having the Maybelline Dream Mousse. That was such a terrible foundation. Like, I don't know, I'm sure a brand could come out with a mousse foundation in 2024 and make a good one. I mean, if anything, the Jones Road foundation, like the What The foundation, is a similar concept to that. I didn't personally love What The foundation because I don't think it's necessarily ideal for my skin type, but I did give that one to my mom and she really likes it. But I just remember having like the most orange shade of the Maybelline Dream Mousse. And then they had others. There's like the Dream Blush, like they were doing everything in the mousse. Like if we're thinking about products I want brands to bring back and like redo, like I want that line to come back. Like I don't purchase from Maybelline because they're not cruelty free, but back in the day, I had so much from Maybelline. Like the Great Lash Mascara was such an iconic product. Well, it was so funny though, because I don't remember it ever being good. I don't really know how that became like the it mascara, because I don't remember ever liking it. I think it was just that it was the least expensive mascara you could find anywhere, but it wasn't great despite the name. Going in with some cream bronzer, this is the Makeup by Mario Soft Sculpt Shaping Stick, and this brush, every time I've been using this in a video recently, I've gotten a lot of questions. So it is the Nikki LaRose, it's her collab with BK. It is the N15. Such a good brush for this. I use this for, actually I use it for powders and for creams. I really like it for my blushes and my bronzers, mostly my liquids and creams, but like I said, I use it for powders too. I feel like for this look, because the eyes are a little bit more bold, I mean, they're neutral, but they're more bold than I would generally do. I don't want to go too much color on the face, so the blush that I chose is a pretty kind of peachy, and we're not going to go too heavy. So because of that, I am going to go a little bit stronger, I would say, with the bronzer slash contour here, and mostly just bronzer really, which is also probably exactly how I would have done my makeup with the Naked palette back in the day. Like I said though, I was a Naked 2 girl, and I remember being super into like a grayish, taupey, cool toned eye, and Naked 2 was perfect for that. It does make me wonder if they would ever bring that one back. Like, it's just this one that's back, but I really loved the Naked 2 palette. I think it would have been fun to bring them back together. But while we're on memory lane, okay, another one that I thought it was actually a nail memory. Do you remember Crackle nail polish? Like, if you are around my age, I'm sure you must. Like, it was such a thing. I look back on that and I like shudder. It's so funny. Like, that was the it cool nail to do. So if you're not familiar with it, it was a top coat that you would apply, and after you put it on, it would basically like break apart and crackle, and then your nails had this like chipped appearance to them. Or not chipped, I guess that sounds bad, but it was very split. And we would layer this over like bright nails. So you might have like hot pink nails with the black crackle to them. I will say, I think the most fun thing about getting older, I mean, among many things actually, I guess, but one thing I really love is nostalgia and thinking back on things fondly, like what a fun time in my life, and like maybe laughing like, okay, absolutely hilarious that I was doing the crackle nails. But there's also something really fun and nostalgic about sitting here today and playing with the Naked palette. Like, it does just make me very happy. And I feel similarly with a lot of fashion things that I'm watching come back into style, because, you know, being 30, there are a lot of trends from my childhood of like Y2K that are really popular these days, and I know there's definitely some discourse about it, and a lot of people don't like seeing these older trends come back, or they shudder and they don't want them to have a resurgence. Like, I know there's a lot of vitriol on the internet over low-rise jeans, but I really do love it, and I think there's something so much fun about being able to watch something come back into trend that was really popular when I was younger. And that's how I feel with a lot of these fashion choices that maybe I wasn't participating in at the time because I was a kid, but now I can wear them as an adult, and that feels so fun for me. Like, I love wearing low-rise jeans, capris, things that were really cool when I was a kid. But I'm taking a little bit of blush. This is the e.l.f. liquid blush in the shade Peach Perfect. But what I was trying to say was, I love wearing things that were really cool when I was a kid, because here I am today, the 30-year-old woman in these outfits that my childhood self would have thought was really cool. And there's something so beautiful about that, being the person that the 7-year-old version of me was like watching these trends that were cool in real time. Like, now I can be her in 2024, and that's just like such a fun, special feeling for me. I think that's part of the reason I feel so much joy in the nostalgia of a lot of these trends coming back. But with the Naked palette coming back in particular, I was pleasantly surprised by the feedback from it, because I was kind of looking over the comments when it was first announced on Trend Mood, and you know, if you follow Trend Mood or you keep up with launches, the consensus on most things is the comments are generally really, really negative on Trend Mood. Like, regardless of the launch, they're normally pretty critical of it. But this was one of the first launches I've seen in a while that was super well received. People were ecstatic to see the Naked palette coming back. And I mean, I think maybe most of the negative feedback I was seeing was related to the price, but people seemed really, really excited about the Naked palette. And it's so interesting to watch it still garner so much excitement 14 years later. By the way, the powder that I'm using, this is the Jones Road powder. It is the pink powder, but I'm applying it kind of all over actually. Okay, but also touching up the brows a bit more. I do feel like with this slightly bolder eye that I have going on today, I want a little bit more structure in the brows to balance that out. The lip combo that I would always do. Well, I had this Sonia Kashuk lip liner back when Sonia Kashuk had makeup before. Now they just have tools, but they used to have makeup, and I had this nude lip liner from her, and that was like my everyday lip combo. It was that plus the NYX Butter Gloss in Sugar Cookie, maybe? One of the really light milky pink shades. But starting with Nude Beige lip liner from NYX, part of me is like, should I just stop right here? I think this always works and looks great, but I'm gonna add just a little bit of dimension. Which of these do I want to use? Baddest Beige from e.l.f. Okay, could be done right here. We're gonna use this lipstick from Bite. This one's not as much of a walk down memory lane, but I do miss Bite when Bite was a brand. But this is actually a lipstick that I made in their lip lab. They have, I think they still have 2 in New York. They have a bunch of these still. Even though the makeup line isn't there anymore, you can still go and make your own lipstick. So this was my own shade that I made. I think I made this at their Williamsburg location. I've done it a few times. It's very fun. It was quite a throwback today using the Naked palette, but I hope you enjoyed this little walk down memory lane. Thank you so much for watching, and I will go ahead and see you in my next video. Bye.